Up around here, second chain, all this area up here in Ayers Dugout, Ayers Point, this whole particular area up in here. You got tremendous amount of good structure that's in here. Plenty of bait's been working up in this area here. Again, a big fluctuation in tides. We're back on the more toward here the last couple of days. We've been in more of a positive tide format as opposed to the negative tides we've had for the last few weeks. So it kind of changes the game a little bit and kind of gives you some different areas that you can open back up and fish into. This is one of those particular areas. Get over here on the dugout side of it, the reef and everything. You get back here on Ayers Island, Rattlesnake, all this area back in here. It's been fishable, but now that we've gotten some more water back in here, it's made it a little bit that much better. So we're working just in and around these areas here, over the little bit of scattered shell, mud, some grass that's in these areas here. And we've caught some decent trout that are in this area, a few scattered redfish, a couple of black drum here and there. But just like I say, just with the water fluctuation coming back for us, so we've wanted to get back into some of these areas we may haven't been touched in a little while. So it's been semi-productive, not super great days, but again, there's fish to be had in some of these areas. You just have to get out there and just get after them and work. Main things that we've been throwing, we're in those transition days. Was headed toward a new moon, so we've been throwing a little bit more downsized profile baits. Soft dines. Been throwing the original size down south. Been throwing the burner shad. Been throwing the knock and tail, the 4-inch and the 3 1/4 inch in that. A few other baits as well. Not as much corky action as not these last few weeks for us, or a few days for us, or any of the people that I've had. Primarily been plastics and the suspended baits, i.e. the soft dine. Like I say, the softer version. We've had a few of the XLs thrown. Did moderately well with those. Wasn't a great production week from lots of catching, but we've caught fish in lots of the locations we've been at. Just the great numbers. Big numbers weren't there. No big fish, not as of yet, but some quality fish here and there. We've caught some low 20s, upper teens. Has been pretty good in those areas. Of course, the redfish have all been in that lower slot, 20s to 23s, which is fine. It's been good. Primary culprits we've been throwing as far as the colors goes. Big Papa's been good for us. Twisted Tea's been good for us. Burner in the burner shad, we've been throwing the mud minnow, which has been very productive for us in that particular flavor. And also the mirror lure, the Little Johns. Been throwing watermelon red in that. A couple of the soft dines we've been throwing been pretty much mullet flavor, silver body, black back, a little bit of orange on the nose has been the kind of the go-to for us on that. And we've had a few that's kind of ventured off of that and gone to with the XL and just your regular XL as far as the color scheme goes with that. But nothing true to, like I say, it hadn't been just a super productive week, but we've caught fish in and around this area here. Of course, the majors and minors, again, is the main time frame of which we're trying to focus and be in some of these areas to fish, especially if it lines up for you. You'll catch either, hopefully you catch a whole full one and you can fish it for the entire 2 to 3 hours. You can fish in and around that time frame the area that you're wanting to be. So of course, you're looking for bait. The structure's right. Water temps have been up in the mid to upper 60s, so it's been pretty good from that standpoint. Hadn't had to layer up quite as much with our winter gear. So hopefully those weather patterns will hold as far as those temperature goes like that, to have some enjoyable times out on the water. All the way up here from Allen's Bite, all the way to the Mott area. This area all the way up to here, into a little bit of Long Reef Bend, down in this area here. Again, fluctuating the tides. A lot of water that's been pushed out of here now that there's water been coming back. So some of these areas are starting to kind of show some fish back up. Especially when you get back up in here in the Long Reef Bend area, you've got all those little back lakes. You can fish the guts on that. You've got the bar that's out there. You can get on one side or the other of the bar, depending on what your water levels are. Of course, the Mott, it's really good. You got a lot of different structure that's in that area there. And then when you come back down toward Allen's, all here on St. Joe shoreline, you've got all these different little mouths that dump out into Aransas Bay, and you have some opportunity up and down there. We've seen grass back in these areas here that are starting to show back up pretty good. It really hadn't gone away, but it's been somewhat unfishable with the amount of water that's been pushed away from us. But the one thing that's about this particular area up and down here, you get a little bit more hard-packed sand area, so fish not kind of holding on that too terribly much. You can come across them every so often. You just kind of work some water. But again, your main structure that you're focusing on, grass is always a constant no matter what time of year. But then, of course, your mud and your clump shell. And that's the areas, if you know of those, that's where you kind of really want to focus yourself. Like up here in Allens, you've got that kind of focus. It's back in these types of little areas that are back in here. Of course, around the point. And then if you get up into Allens, you've got little lakes that dump out into that, all the way back up in here. So you can kind of work yourself in and around some of these areas. You can adjust and get to the right amount of water level that you need. We've been primarily, most of the fish we've been catching has been in, waist deep to knee deep water. Primarily, a lot of it's been more thigh to knee deep water. And we can locate those areas, get back in the little lake that's like this back area right in here that opens itself up to a little bit deeper water as you push back around in that. You get opportunities. It gives yourself that, especially if you can catch it right. If you've had a pretty decent little tide and you get back in and that tide starts dropping out, you can have a pretty productive day back in there, or maybe even a short time frame. Those fish are trying to get out and don't really want to get trapped in some of those deeper lakes that are back in there. But that said, you just have to kind of gauge what your capabilities are and what you can and can't do. But again, same baits we've been throwing. Haven't thrown the 5-inch in the down south very much. It's been primarily the original size. Same flavors that we mentioned earlier. White ice and bone diamond have been pretty good as well to kind of sprinkle in there as far as the color choice goes. Of course, the knock and tail. Haven't thrown much of the marker 54. The jerk shrimp. It's been primarily plastics and the suspended baits. And ever so often, especially when you get back in these lakes like that, we'll tie on the top water just to see if we can get some type of reaction or some type of action off of that. Just for fun fact face, and just to see what happens with that. Not a whole lot of action with the top water, so we've been primarily just sticking with the plastics and throwing those in these different areas. Just kind of look and pay attention to what your water clarity is. It'll kind of take you down that, your darker baits if you got the dirtier water, and then of course if you got the really gin clear areas, it's not been a tremendous amount of wind or anything to that effect. Then you can throw your more clear baits or translucent baits, if you will. Still throwing 16th-ounce jig heads. Been throwing those for quite some time. That's still going to be the choice, because especially that depth of water, you don't want your bait really just kind of dumping down off into the water levels or the columns very fast. So the 16th-ounce, maybe even the 32nd, allows you to just kind of drift or kind of float through those water columns through that area like that. So just pay attention. Again, majors and minors are the key thing for us, locating and finding fish in these types of areas. Back in Swan Lake area here in Copano, all the back shoreline here has been pretty good for us. Out in the middle has been pretty good too, especially when the lower tides have been in play. You got your mud in here, you've got your shell in here scattered, plenty of grass that's in this. Of course, you got deep water access down here toward the Port Bay area, and then of course out on the Copano Bay side, of course, a little bit more hard packed sand that's out there on the front. But if you can catch it, we had a couple of days last week that we were touching 70, 71 degrees on our water temp. So we kind of just took a flyer on that and see if we might be able to locate some fish that are hanging out here around these little spoil islands out there on that grass on that deeper edge, just to see. Caught a few trout here and there, nothing great, but just kind of let you know that water temp's a big deal. Those fish like to be comfortable just like us, so we try it out just to see. You never know. You don't never know till you throw, so you give yourself an option that's out here anyway, and it opens some of that back up for you. But we primarily just fish the guts that came through these little islands here and then get on this back shoreline, fishing all that. And of course you can get out there again with the lower tides. It opens up that middle of that lake for you, so you can even get out a little further than what you typically may want to be able to do when you have a normal tide in play. Scattered redfish, again, flounder or two I think we caught back in these areas. Some unexpected black drum ever so often. Primarily caught those on the mirror lures, on the Little Johns. But everything else, again, the down south in the same sizes and the colors that we talked about. Again, that white ice and bone diamond have been pretty good for us. And, of course, the burner shad, again, with the mud minnow flavor has been very good for us for a few weeks now. I've been throwing it quite a bit. Of course, the knock and tail, of course, the rogue has been good for us. Heavy metal's been good for us. The watermelon red in both the knock and tail and the Little John have both been pretty good. Of course, you got your soft dines in that smaller profile, because we're fixing to be in that new moon phase here pretty quick. So you can even start throwing the bigger, if you so choose. You can throw the bigger versions if you want to now, and even in the transition days, just to see. Sometimes it's productive that way. But primarily, if you just got your game plan in place and execute that, and then really pay attention. Sometimes we've had some real subtle days and letting the fish wanting to kind of dictate to us what we want. So it's been helpful to have extra people in the water so we can try a little bit different techniques as far as color and size wise on our bait selection. So it kind of narrowed it down for us a little bit faster. So if you have that opportunity and you've got multiple people with you to fish, then incorporate that into your fishing day, and it'll kind of help you guide you what you're doing. But again, subtlety with the fish and what they're kind of wanting and kind of dictating to us, you have to really pay attention to that, because it hasn't been a super great bite like it was during the full moon phase. But I anticipate this new moon phase to really kind of work out for us to be pretty well. So, but we'll see. Those days are coming. So anyhow, make sure you pay attention to weather patterns this time of year. It can get kind of spooky on you there in a hurry if you're not careful, and you just don't want to get caught out in some of these areas like that. But anyhow, pay attention to your majors and minors. Execute those time frames. Give yourself plenty of opportunity as far as the right structure, the bait, all that kind of stuff. Water temperature is going to start playing a really big factor as far as where these fish are going to start migrating to and moving to here as we get further into the springtime.